So we're going to talk about the trilemma of the inside knee pull grip. So obviously it's a version of grip that's going to lead to three different options of what we could do. Built within those three different options will be takedowns, leg entries, and the opportunity to invert to obviously sweeping positions. Within those categories, there'll be variation of which options you can choose to take. But broadly, three clear options: takedowns, entries to the legs, and inversions, basically into reverse de la Riva. So let's talk about what the inside knee pull is. When we're playing guard here, we can take a cross grip. So I can take my rear hand and secure a wrist deep grip behind Nick's knee. Why this grip is so powerful is because Nick can't turn and run out. He's running directly into the grip. If I were to take the same side grip, Nick could just turn and rip that leg out. Another danger is as well, if I take a grip here, Nick can turn it into an underhook and start to get into strong passing positions from here. The inside knee pull grip, there is no underhook here. Nick has no ability to really counter this grip in any meaningful way. So when we're taking this grip, we're taking it wrist deep. So again, if I take a grip here, Nick can back out and we're gonna lose it. If I take a wrist deep grip, it's gonna be strong. And something that helps me secure a wrist deep grip is to basically hit his leg. If I'm trying to be stealth with it, I really don't get that deep. But if I club the leg, we get a strong grip. And what happens as well is if we club the leg, we often bend it and we can get some forward momentum, or we keep that bend in the leg. I find I get a more meaningful grip if Nick's leg's bent. If it's straight and I'm trying to get it, I often end up just fingers deep. And when it's fingers deep, he can back out. So we still want to create opportunity here. So I still want to be fighting Nick's grips here. And when Nick pulls that grip out, we get our inside knee pull here. So this is the foundation of the grip here. What we can do from here is I'll briefly demonstrate three options, and then we're going to go into detail about each option. When Nick tries to back out and he can't, he actually pulls me up and I can transition into a regular single leg from here. What we can also do, something Ryan Hall made famous against BJ Penn, is we can turn this into an inversion. Why Ryan Hall would use the inside knee grip is Imanari's lead exposure to get kneed in the head, whereas an inside knee pull, my shoulder's a bit protected. So when we take an inside knee pull, I can fall back between the legs and start getting to backside position to expose the heel. Or say for example, we're dealing with someone that we think maybe is a superior wrestler, where we think even a single leg, we're not going to be able to put them down. And maybe they have quite good leg awareness. We can use the inside knee pull to pull us into a reverse de la Riva to get behind our training partner here. Obviously, we can go back into leg attacks, or we could come up behind him and secure back positions. So we call it the trilemma because there are three broad options when we take this inside knee pull. We can come up single, we can invert to the legs, or we can invert to a reverse de la Riva to get behind our training partner here. So that's basically the summary of an inside knee pull and why it's advantageous over a standard knee pull. All right, guys, we're gonna do the inside knee pull to a single leg. Obviously, you're gonna have your own preferences for how to finish the single. So broadly as a concept, I want you to utilize the knee pull to the single leg position. I'm gonna show you my preferred options from here. But again, once you're on the leg, you can do whatever you want from that position. If you already have a style of completing the single that you like, go straight for that. For me, from getting up off the ground to getting a leg to returning to the ground, we want maximum speed. So the second we get a leg, we want to keep them off balance and put them down immediately. If we come up on a leg But thinking about options from here, that gives your opponent or your training partner an opportunity to collect their balance. And once they have their balance, they can start thinking about counters. The people that put me down the quickest off of the bar or even in open space are the guys that once they get to a leg, I never get my balance. I'm already on the way down. I'm not even thinking about counter options from here. So if you could choose an option from the single leg, I would recommend the one that keeps your opponent off balance the longest until you complete the takedown or advanced position. So let's take a look at how we can use the inside knee pull to secure a single. So I don't want to just shoot a leg, get this inside knee pull while Nick's arm's in the way here, because if I'm still circling around, he can still secure an underhook here and block me. So it's not the be all end all of this grip. And considering that this hand is here, that might lead you to the other two options in the trilemma. Say no matter what we do, we can't get a reaction out of this arm, then you're probably going to be looking for leg entries or reverse de la Riva. But a good way to get this hand out of the way is to fight it with 2-on-1s. We can go 2 around the wrist, we can control the elbow, start to peel that elbow wide. And as Nick is uncomfortable with this grip, he rips it out and we get our knee pull and we circle behind before he has an opportunity to get to the underhook, right? So again, if we grab it and the arm's in the way, Nick's gonna turn it into an underhook and that's gonna cause me many problems, right? So we're fighting this grip here. And the second he overreacts, don't let go immediately either. If I secure Nick's arm and he's lightly pulling away, don't just let go because he might not overreact and it's back to where it was. I want a strong reaction here. So I'm really committing. I'm making it look like I really want to do something with this arm. And when he overreacts, we get to the leg as quick as possible. I'm placing my knee behind Nick's knee to off balance him slightly here. If my knee's out of the way and I'm securing it, Nick can step back with this leg and he can start sprawling on us. So by placing my knee behind Nick's knee here, it keeps me attached and it makes it hard for Nick to sprawl. I'm not looking at the floor here. That's gonna make it easier for Nick to sprawl. I'll collapse my head, put weight on my head. The second I get to the leg, I'm getting my head upright into his chest. I step up with the outside leg and I immediately off balance him with my head. Again, when we get up, we want him off balance. If I get up and Nick's comfortable, he's probably gonna throw in a whizzer or he might even start thinking about counter attacks. I know Nick has a lot of reversals out of here where he takes me over the head if Nick goes for it. So if you want to reverse me, yes, Imigeshi. Nick has a lot of reversals out of here, but for him to hit these reversals, he needs to have his balance. If he's thinking about collecting his balance, he's not thinking about counterattacks or defense. So, again, we're giving a strong reaction here. He rips it out. I step behind the knee. I secure my grips around Nick's leg. I step up and I off balance Nick here. He's collecting his balance the whole time. He's not thinking about counterattacks. And the way I off balance him is my head pushing in. So we can start thinking about takedowns here. We can think about running the pipe. One of the simplest ways I like to run the pipe is to get my shoulder on top of Nick's hip here. If my shoulder's off of his hip and I run the pipe, he's got good balance. If I use my shoulder to run the pipe, we can hit that hip to the floor immediately. So if I have the other leg, pay attention to my right shoulder. If I'm running the pipe here, Nick keeps his balance. If my shoulder comes on top of the hip and I run the pipe and step back, we get him down immediately. So we've gone from shot to off balance to running the pipe and quickly returning to the mat. If they can collect their balance at the top, like I said, they'll think about counterattacks and they'll think about how to sprawl on you. So one more time. We get a strong reaction out of this arm. Knee behind their ankle, and I'm securing my grips and keeping a good posture here. Good straight back. I'm not leaning down, looking at the floor. And if my leg's out of the way and I do both things wrong, he sprawls on me. And we lose everything. So I get my knee behind, I get good posture, and I come up and I'm off balancing. And we get that shoulder on top of the leg, and we're able to reverse the position. So a basic knee pull single, run the pipe, and use our shoulder to get him to the floor. So we're going to use the inside knee pull to attack the legs. Got to give credit where credit's due. Ryan Hall, BJ Penn, this is where it came from. This is who I stole it from. So let's take a look. So we're going to have the same grip battle here, right? And the beauty of this is, obviously, for the single leg, I want this hand out of the way. So I want Nick to rip it out of the way and I can come up, because again, if this hand's in the way, this kills my single leg hit. So the beauty for the inversion to the legs is, when I secure this grip, if Nick's anticipating a single leg here, this grip doesn't bother me at all, because we're going through the legs. How are we going through the legs? I'm going to throw both legs past Nick here, past his lead leg to the outside of his lead leg. I'm going to fall inside, and as I fall inside, we're transferring from wrist to elbow deep. I'm using my other hand to block his other leg. That allows me to pull myself behind Nick here. Now we want to throw a 50-50 here. This is what Ryan Hall did. He threw a 50-50 hook here, secured a 50-50, and he inverted to the backside. So he obviously had the heel exposure here. Just to clarify and defend BJ Penn to a lot of people, everyone said BJ should backstep. If I'm on my hip here and Nick Ortiz backsteps, he finds the elbow and he could probably escape the heel. If he comes over here, grabs the elbow, clears it. But what Ryan Hall did, and what people strangely still miss the detail of today, is Ryan Hall went belly down. Now if Nick backsteps, he breaks his own leg. So the key here is the ability to expose the heel and turn belly down. That eliminates the backstep, and that's why when BJ did backstep, he got his leg popped in the process. But it is a difficult battle to go from inversion, exposing the heel, and getting belly down. A lot of times guys are so aware of this position now that Nick will be backstepping and fighting my elbow line before I can even go belly down. So we have to basically switch our leg configuration a bit to protect us at that late stage from Nick getting to my elbow. So I'll show you the variation this time. So we got our inside knee pull grip. My legs go outside and I go elbow deep, and we pummel our hand to the back of Nick's knee here. A little detail you might have noticed is I bring my knees to my chest there. So that's so that locked and loaded for me to throw this 50-50 hook. I make space here by extending my left arm and throwing the 50-50 hook in. A detail I want to change here is I basically want to throw this leg in the center line here. So we've got what's called essentially a crisscross position, because that means when I expose the heel and Nick turns to fight the elbows, my inside knee is now in the way here. So we've got a frame to prevent Nick easily reaching my elbow from this position. So we get it from a few different angles here. So we get our inside knee pull, legs to the side, elbow deep, and I bring my knees to my chest here. We throw both legs into position at the same time. So when we expose the heel, if Nick beats me from going belly down, we've got some range here. This is going to help me keep Nick at bay for us to get the finish. Inside knee pull, legs to the side, elbow deep, and knees to chest here. We throw both legs at the same time. Nick falls forward, and we get our exposure. We lock everything up. We're trying to go belly down, but he backsteps, he beats us to it. But because of the configuration of our legs, we can still easily get the finish. So that brings us to our second dilemma of the trilemma, and that is, if the hand's out of the way, shoot a single. If the hand's in the way and we can't get rid of it, boom, invert to the legs. All right, guys, so we've covered shooting from an inside knee pull, we've covered inverting to the legs, but we also have a third option, and that is to basically turn it into a reverse de la Riva, but an aggressive reverse de la Riva. I got to again give credit where credit's due. Roberto Jimenez was hitting me with this in training, and he was also, I've seen him use it in competition. I can't reference the exact match, but he's definitely used it in competition. It is a good one. I wouldn't say there's a specific time to do it over inverting to the legs. I would just say it's another option that keeps your game unpredictable. And being unpredictable is one of the best things you can have in jiu-jitsu. Your training partner, when you take a grip, doesn't know where you're going to go next with it. And obviously, the more things he has to worry about, the more things he has to defend, and the more likely he's going to find himself out of position and lead us into one of those attacks. So let's take a look at it. So we've got basically our inside knee pull here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide into a reverse de la Riva. So if Nick tries to straighten his leg here, he pulls me. So when he does that, we can use that to invert and get behind our training partner. So basically, our typical reverse de la Riva hook would be here, and we got a grip on the ankle. Some people prefer on the ankle. I like to grab underneath the heel so they can't press too much weight back, and they're also always leaning forward. Or you can come through and connect to your shin, or you could even just rest your hands here. But basically the mechanism is we're going to use a pendulum style movement to pull myself behind there. So as I get into the upper back, I can use my secondary hand to start to stretch Nick out, and we can find ourselves getting behind our training partner here. So again, once we're behind our training partner here, again, it's going to depend on what his reaction is for where we're going to head next. Obviously, we come to body locks. We could go back to the legs. But one of the battles from reverse de la Riva is when I enter the position, Nick settles and he posts on my leg here. And now, very tough for me to start inverting, and he can start working his passing game. Obviously, the beauty of this inside knee pull entry is before Nick can even process what's happening, I'm already inverting underneath. So again, we're getting that pullback reaction, and he's pulling me behind him here. So you see immediately I'm going straight for this grip behind the secondary leg and getting my head behind. I would immediately transfer from the knee pull grip to the ankles here. So then if Nick tries to run away, it's very easy for me to start following him here, or even remaining in a good layer of control. Obviously, we've got our simple options where if I can get to the hips, sit Nick down if he stands back up. Obviously, we've got options to engage the legs here. So many options from when we get behind our training partner. So if Nick stands up, we've got our inside knee pull. We're pulling him and we're getting a pullback reaction. I slide in and I get behind that secondary knee. As quickly as I can, I transfer my foot in front of his hip and I'm controlling the ankles here. We can pummel that secondary leg in. Very good control. If Nick tries to run here, he's going to pull us up. Or if Nick settles his balance here, we can secure the hips and kick him out. But I want you to think of it just as a scrambling position. So if I get behind Nick here and we hit this inside knee pull, we can take any number of grips on our opponent's legs here. Typically, a common reaction is Nick drops his far knee and starts to try to turn back into us here. We could go back to the legs, or we could use it to start chasing the back. But I want you to get behind him and attack immediately. So if you look at the scrambling options here, we'll get our inside knee pull. I'm immediately looking to come up, and we're going to start chasing the back. Typically speaking, because they don't really sense that grip leads to a reverse de la Riva, the second we get behind them, they're thinking more along the lines of wrestling and more along the lines of getting away. If I'm settled in a reverse de la Riva, I start to invert behind Nick. Nick starts thinking about all these technical options, dropping, turning to face, clearing the hooks. If I immediately secure it, spin through straight away, he's thinking, I don't know what's happening here, and he's gonna try to run. That was the most common response out of a knee pull reverse de la Riva entry. Expect different responses to your standard reverse de la Riva, and expect them running and utilize that to chase down and attack the back. All right, let's talk about how we can set up arm drags against a standing opponent while we're seated. Obviously, it goes into a bit of a hand fighting sequences. And again, if you are making contact with their wrists and they're immediately ripping their arms away, that leads to entries to shots into the legs, right? So even if we don't fully consolidate the arm drag grip, we're still gonna have opportunities to shoot from our butt. So if I have Nick here, when we're hitting an arm drag from a seated position against a standing opponent, I want to ensure my lead foot is on the outside, because when we hit the drag, Nick's backwards momentum is basically going to lift us off the ground, and if this leg was inside, it would interfere with our ability to take the back. So we're going to have that foot on the outside. But obviously we're protecting our inside space here, so I don't want to just leave it here, and Nick can potentially step inside here and get to win the inside position, right? So I keep it inside until I start securing my arm drag grips. For the arm drag grip, we're gonna take a thumb down and we're gonna take a grip deep behind the armpit here. And the trick so that Nick doesn't pull his arm out is to ensure that his wrist is below or behind his armpit. If his wrist is in front of his armpit here, very easy for him to rip that out. Again, that's not the end of the world, because if he rips it out, we might have entries to the legs, right? So again, we have options in either direction, but if we want to secure the arm drag, thumb down, deep armpit grip, and again, whenever we take a grip, we're always looking to go wrist deep. Fingers slip, the wrist provides another layer of protection. We don't place our foot outside until we secure the grip. So if we're fighting here, the foot's outside. So you see, if Nick's pulling here, as long as that wrist is below the armpit, all he's doing is pulling me up, and we can reach that far hip. So when we're playing here, we're protecting the inside position until we secure our drag grips. So once we secure the drag, foot comes outside, and we're pushing this wrist underneath or behind his armpit. So now when Nick starts to pull, he's actually pulling me off the ground, and I make the quick transition to the hip here. But again, obviously, even if you guys don't get everything perfect, if Nick does rip his arm out, you can come up to the legs. You can find a way to shoot to the legs. So again, the key details, our lead leg is outside, so we have no interference to pursue the back. Thumb down and hand below or behind the armpit here. If we follow those details, when they try to rip their arm out, they're gonna pull us up. But again, if you mess it up, he's gonna strip that grip, lift his hands away from his legs, potentially square up his stance, and we can shoot straight to the legs. All right, let's talk about how we can set up ankle picks from a seated position against a standing opponent in this sort of long range area. There's two styles of ankle pick I go for consistently. And of those two styles, one of them leads us to a couple different options. Let's look at the first one right now. So I'll catch this one when Nick is keeping low posture. He's keeping that head-to-head posture. The reason I'll go for a traditional style ankle pick from here is because if we were wrestling and I wanted to hit a pick on Nick, I would have to get his head over his lead leg. And if I do this correctly, it forces Nick to take a step back with his lead leg. Come back. Sure. You take a step back with his leg to keep his balance there. When we push his head over his lead leg, he has to take a step to keep his balance. So obviously, if I push his head over his lead leg and he can't take a step, we're gonna knock him over. So if you see from a seated position here, Nick's got that head-to-head pressure. And let's say we're moving forwards and Nick's backing up. I'm trying to create some action here. It sets up, because his head's low and it's facing me here, forehead to forehead, it sets up a very easy pick, the exact same way I would do it from a standing position. So I'll find this one's works well against a defensive opponent. So obviously if he is defensive here and he's got head to head, we could still heist up. But if we wanted to turn this into a sweeping position, I'm scooting towards him. I throw my legs back and I come up to my lead knee. I club his head and get my pinky to the bottom of his heel here. As I take his head over his lead leg, he cannot take a step and we're able to sweep him in. One detail to be careful of, don't hang on to the head. Because as we come on top, we're going to get armbarred here. Very common counter to the standard style ankle pick like that. So as soon as you see him going down, lift the leg, let go of the head. So I'm scooting towards Nick. I throw my legs to one side, come up on the lead knee, club his head over his lead leg as we take him down, let go of the head. And we're going to try to get head over head to secure the sweeping position. If we hang too far back, Nick clears the leg grips, he can frame and get straight back up. So that's our first style of ankle pick, and that is if their head is low and we can club it over the lead leg. Another style of pick here, which leads to two different options. I can use this pick to basically secure Nick's back, a standing rear body lock, or if I secure it and he's so quick he tries to rip his leg out, we can put two hands on it and pull him into a standard Ashy single leg X position, right? So when we're here and let's say Nick's head's a little higher this time, but he's still almost in a defensive sort of sequence as we're coming towards him, he's moving back. I want to throw my legs the exact same way I did on the previous one, and we're going to come up to two knees, and I'm going to reach for this ankle. Obviously, because I'm not controlling the head, and there could potentially be weight on his lead leg, I have to hit this very hard. But generally speaking, a lot of jiu-jitsu mats are quite slippery, and if this happens later in a match, there could be sweat on the mats. So what might look difficult in a very dry setting actually is quite easy, provided we hit it with the correct explosiveness. So I reach and I get my little finger as close to the heel as possible. Best case scenario from here is I pull Nick's leg straight across my hip pocket here with a shelf, and we can reach straight for the far hip here. So immediately I'm reaching for Nick's far hip and chasing the rear body lock. We catch this one explosive enough, we do get that movement we want. So I'm scooting at Nick, his head's a bit higher, and I rip it from here straight across my hip. And we've got a shelved leg here. Here it's hard for Nick to turn back into us because we've shelved that leg, and we can easily lock up rear body lock. Why this one works, I find generally speaking, I can pull Nick's leg cross body onto the hip if I catch his leg as he goes to step backwards. So we're scooting here, and there's weight off of the leg. So it's very light for us to get to the hip. That's the first option for me. Obviously the best option, straight from the ground to a rear body lock. Sometimes the second option is if there's weight on that foot and I pick it up, but I don't get that ability to rip it cross body, and Nick senses this and goes to rip his leg out, I put two hands on that foot. Obviously we could chase him up from here, but usually if Nick senses I have such a strong grip, he turns to face and I pull it into a single X or an Ashi position. So again, if I catch this ankle and there's too much weight on it, I can't pull it very far. Nick feels this, tries to rip his leg out, get two hands on it. If he keeps trying to pull his leg out, I'll chase him up. But most guys feel they give it one explosive movement, he goes, shit, I'm not gonna get it. He turns back in, hoping to catch me as I come up. So he gives it one explosive movement, he turns back in, but instead, I pull his leg into an Ashi or a single leg X. So we've got those three options from here, right? I'm chasing Nick. First option is his head's low. We club him, let go of the head, and hit a pick. Second option, his head's higher. He's backing off. We catch that leg in transition, shelf it, secure a rear body lock. Third option is we don't catch it in the air, but we still get it. He tries to rip his leg out, he turns to face, and we pull that leg into an Ashi. So we've got three solid options for ankle picks in a seated versus standing position. All right, guys, let's talk about the hip pick. And that is a sort of a variation of an ankle pick, but we're going to strike the hip. Why do we strike the hip? We strike it so it puts weight in their back leg, and it's always easy to pick up a leg when obviously weight's in the opposite leg. So when we're hitting the hip, that's going to push their weight into the rear, make that lead leg light. But there's something we need to think about. The most obvious, easy option for this one actually leaves you very, very vulnerable. So I see people hit this. Obviously it works if your opponent doesn't know the counter. But if I'm here on Nick and I'm using my lead arm to strike the hip and my rear arm to pick, I can take weight off Nick's lead leg, but he can actually drag me out of here. Then we get our back taken straight away. So we'll hit that one from a couple different angles so you can see if I use my rear hand to strike the hip, I'm giving him a perfect drag. And we can obviously get countered very easily. So what we actually want to do is use our lead hand to strike the hip and our rear hand to pick. So best case scenario this comes up is I'm scooting towards Nick, he's sort of playing defensive, and we hit it here. Now there's no drag. And because I've got this frame on the hip, Nick actually can't now put weight in that lead leg. And I can pull it past to get to the hip here. Or even potentially, I can get two hands on that lead ankle, pull it back into an Ashi, single X. Obviously many options once we take weight off that lead leg. So again, we're not going to use our lead to strike the hip. We're going to be using our rear. Once we're here, we can even follow Nick straight up. It's easy to lift because, again, weight is in that rear leg. Best time to set it up would be as Nick's moving away from me. I quickly make that transition. And again, once we're here, Nick might try to pull his leg out. We keep two hands on the ankle. If we can pull that ankle past to create a shelf to get to the rear body lock. So a basic hip pick version of the ankle pick where we don't use basically our rear hand to strike the hip. We use our lead to strike the hip to prevent counters. All right, guys, let's talk about when we're playing from a seated versus standing position and our opponent or training partner secures both our legs and is able to lift them to put us flat. Quite often from here, most people will accept being pushed flat and they'll decide they'll have to play guard from a supine position. Whereas we can actually use the momentum of them lifting our legs for a sort of an unorthodox strategy to backwards roll into a shot. When people lift our legs, generally speaking, they rush forward because they want to get your legs over your head to keep you in a flat position. I'm going to use Nick Ortiz to demonstrate because he's way more acrobatic in a backwards roll scenario, right? So I'm standing above Nick here, and quite often what happens is, first situation is when they lift the legs, Nick accepts this and he starts playing here, looking for outside passing strategies, right? But obviously, when I lift Nick's legs, he posts two hands on the ground. It's going to take more pressure for me to get him flat from here. Sometimes we have a battle from here, Nick might clear his legs, and now we're back to square one. So when I pick up someone's legs and they post their hands on the ground, I really have to lift. And as I lift and run into Nick, he can backwards roll and use that forward pressure to secure a double leg out of this position. So it's surprisingly effective strategy, and that is Nick's basically using my momentum against me here. And it really doesn't have to come up in a scenario where he posts his hands and we fight. I can literally pick it up and just go straight into a double. Very unexpected, surprisingly high percentage, but as we get our legs lifted and our training partners rushing forward, we use their pressure, their forward momentum of lifting our legs to hit a backwards roll. And generally, because our training partners rushing forward into us, leads us into a perfect shot from the seated position.